Hello everyone, welcome back to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany and today we are talking about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and if they're running out of money. Yes, I don't know anything for sure, but it seems like they're blowing through an astonishingly large amount of money and not really taking anything in. And with the latest rumor that the Spotify deal is about to fall apart, Harry and Meghan could be on the hook for a $10 million mortgage that they may not be able to pay off. So guys, I find this really fascinating and I'm going to give you guys a couple reasons why I think Harry and Meghan might be in actually very bad and dire financial straits. So if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany and we do everything related to royals on this channel. So that's news, gossip, fashion, jewelry, television shows, movies, and history. We do it all right here. So if you want to subscribe, that would be great. And in addition, I've started to do kind of daily-ish royal rundown. So this is kind of going over some of the royal news of the day. And so they'll be about 5 minutes long. So those will be coming every day as well. But I love these longer form analysis pieces. And today we are going over, are Harry and Meghan just have like totally, are they blowing through all their money? Because I really think they are. And that's a pretty kind of bad situation for them and just again makes them look like really bad business people. So guys, if you don't know, so just to kind of go over some of the bare basic bones numbers. So Prince Harry's estate left to him by Princess Diana, by the time he inherited the full amount of it, would have amounted to about $13 million or 10 million pounds. And you know, that's a lot of money. Most of his expenses were covered by his father's Duchy of Cornwall. And you know, and most of the money he got from that, he was supposed to kind of use through in a year for royal tours, staff, various things. So I think most of the time when it came to the Duchy of Cornwall money that Harry was getting every year, he was probably going through most of that. And so the Diana money was kind of a sideways as well. And the Queen Mother also left Prince Harry and William a shared trust to split between them. Harry would get more because he is not going to be the future king. William will have access eventually to the Duchy of Cornwall and the Duchy of Lancaster. So William will have his own money to support his family. And the Duchy of Cornwall is actually worth more than the Duchy of Lancaster. So Charles has the Duchy of Cornwall, the Queen has the Duchy of Lancaster. And Charles actually makes quite a bit more money than the Queen on his duchy. So if you're looking at all this, so Harry, it was about $20 million that she left the two of them. So Harry may have gotten, you know, maybe 12 million after that. So you're looking at a grand total of about maybe $30 million for that Harry had, you know, within the two trusts he had. I mean, he probably had spent some of that money, most likely not all, because again, when he was in the royal fold, the vast majority of his expenses were taken care of. So he didn't have really that much, you know, he didn't really have to probably dip into those accounts too much. Now, it's been reported that Meghan had a net worth of $5 million. I always kind of called a bit of foul on that. I thought that was too much for kind of the role that she had. I mean, she was on Suits. Reportedly, I believe I read this in Lady Colin Campbell's book or somebody else's book or anything recently, that she was 7th on the call sheet. So she was pretty far down, which means, you know, she's making very good money. But I just have a really hard time believing she was worth $5 million because she couldn't pay for her wedding dress. Her wardrobe changed drastically between the time she was dating Harry and when she got engaged. Her wardrobe, you know, quadrupled in the thousands, million, you know, over $1 million for her wardrobe suddenly, which was money she wasn't spending before. So clearly she has a lot more money. So how should we look at that? Obviously that's a lot of money, but are they really actually blowing through most of that? And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I think that might be. Number one, they bought a house vastly more costly than they should have. So they bought a house in Montecito, and I just looked again just to double check and make sure I had my numbers right. So that house was $14.65 million. So that home they purchased was half of Harry's trust. Half of all the money Harry has is now tied up in that house. And they got a mortgage for $9.5 million. That's a ton of money, especially when you're considering inflation. Interest rates are going up because the Fed raises the interest rates. And I don't know for sure exactly how their mortgage was put together. I mean, that's something I don't have access to. But I would imagine that, you know, they're on the hook for more money now as interest rates go up. I could be totally wrong, but if they're on the hook, that means every time the interest rate goes up at the Fed, they're paying more money every month for that house. And we're not talking, like a couple $100s. We're potentially talking tens of thousands of dollars going up in terms of, their mortgage potentially. Now, again, I don't know the details. That may be a vast overestimation, but some people already are seeing a couple $100 increases. And when you have a $9 million mortgage, closer to 10, when they pay it all out, I'm sure it'll be closer to what they, closer to Harry's entire inheritance if they got a 30-year mortgage. That's a ton of money, a ton of money. So I think they way overdid it in terms of the house they purchased. Yes, they need a bit of security. I don't think they need 24-hour, armed, like super protective security, but they do need security. And, if they went to like one of the most expensive zip codes in all of California, which is Montecito. Perhaps the Silicon Valley area has replaced it. But there's no reason why Harry and Meghan couldn't have found a more affordable option that offered them this, perhaps even the same amount of square footage for like half the price or less. I always thought, if they were going to purchase a house in California, they should look into the $3 to $5 million range, because that seemed more appropriate based on the amount of money and the cash they had on hand. But blowing half, your inheritance, tying up half of all your money, in the outset in that house is a huge financial burden, I'm sure, especially because, and this is the other thing, when you purchase a house like that, guys, it's very, very expensive to maintain. So their house is over 14,000 square feet. That is massive. And they have over 7 acres. Now, guys, if you haven't owned a large house before, my parents actually owned a house that was the square feet, at the time, obviously was not in California. It was not in a super well-to-do area, like, places in Georgia and New York. So please understand me when I'm saying we're not like, crazy Harry and Meghan level rich, but their house, not considering the storage space in it, was about 8,000 square feet. It was massive. And they had storage areas that I think brought about an extra 2,000 square feet. So they had about a house that was about 10,000 square feet. And I'm not saying that to kind of be braggy or anything. I'm just trying to explain to you, like, they're downsizing now. Their house is going to be at least half or less of that size, because a house like that, guys, is insanely expensive to maintain. Just like they had a pipe issue. So one of their piping that the original builder put in, and their house wasn't even that old. But as it turned out, that piping wasn't good. Like, it was kind of introduced to something new, and then the piping went bad. And so they would have random leaks springing throughout their house. And it's a big house. And if you're not walking every piece of square footage, you'll miss one of these leaks. And so they had to have all the pipes in their house replaced. And that's a huge undertaking in a house that size. It's a huge undertaking. And so you look at Harry and Meghan, like, all the maintenance that they have to do on the lawn, on the house, just like making sure the lights are replaced, the air filters, like, there's even just small things, like everything. Every time I went to my parents' house or I talked to them, it almost seemed like all the time their house was having some sort of issue. And I mean, it was a very, very nice house, not to, deny that. They ended up getting a good deal because the market was in recession when they bought it. But it's like every time, like, they had another issue, like, there was always something going on. And I imagine Harry and Meghan's house is not new. And I imagine that they're having some of the same issues, where it's just things come up that you need to fix, replace. The faucet isn't working, the toilet isn't flushing right. And all those little things add up. In addition to just cleaning houses of those sizes is a huge undertaking. And so they have household staff to do that. I'm sure they have a huge lawn company to take care of their lawn, because they have 7 acres. In California, that's very expensive real estate. It's a lot to maintain. And if you're trying to water your grass, because it's very hot in California, they're going through an astronomical amount of water if they're trying to water their grass and they have real grass. And they're not under a, for example, a drought restriction of some sort. They're going through an astonishing amount of water. And I would imagine, I don't know the specifics. I'm just telling you guys what I know and understand from having a house that's much larger than the average like 3,000 square foot house. There's just not to say that it's not nice to have a big house. I mean, it is. My parents could have hosted like 20 people in their house, but it's also hugely expensive. And so it's just like, and something can go wrong all the time. And so I imagine Harry and Meghan are funneling a ton of money into just maintenance on their house, bare maintenance that they have to do. And not to mention the fact that they have security on this property, 24-hour armed security, which I'm sure costs them an arm and a leg. I think one estimation put it that they were probably going to be spending on every year about $4.4 million on the house, because you think of taxes, like it's enormously expensive to live in California. And so there's all these different things. It's like, they're like burning money. They have to be, because every time they do something, like it costs money. California is an enormously expensive place to live. They're in one of the most expensive zip codes in the state. And so I'm sure they're spending a ton of money on that house. And I think they could have gotten actually something that was smaller and a better price and had the same level of security, the same level. I mean, maybe their neighbors would have been a bit closer. But again, they're living as if they are billionaires, and they're not. So we also have this thing where every time, another clear, I think, danger sign for them is every time we see Meghan, she's in a new outfit. Every piece almost is new. Every single time we see her. And granted, obviously, like, you have some things you don't repeat from time to time. But when we saw her in the Invictus Games, I calculated and it looked like it was about $65,000 of new clothes. $65,000. And when she was at the polo game recently, I did look at her shorts because I was just curious how much they were. They were like $150 for those shorts. And granted, obviously they have access to a decent amount of money, but if you're paying $4.4 million a year just on, I think, probably general upkeep of the house, the property taxes, all these different things. Not to mention electricity could be in the tens of thousands of dollars every month, in addition to water, sewage, like all those costs are huge. But so she's spending all these things, and she has an Hermes blanket now. She has a Dior bag that says Duchess of Sussex on it. And kid you not, when I saw that, I was like, I wanted to gag, because I was like, and they couldn't even spell out Duchess of Sussex because the trim on the Lady Dior bag she had wasn't long enough, so they couldn't actually spell it out. So it was like just DSS something. I can't remember, but I just remember thinking, golly, that looks stupid, and just kind of so self-consuming, because it's like, tell me where your duchy is on a map. Meghan, tell me where Sussex is. What do you know about Sussex? Because it's just stupid for you to put it on a bag if you know nothing about it. That's just stupid. Anyways, so they have all this money that they're draining into this house and in this wardrobe that she has now, which I'm sure maybe she has an Hermes bag sitting around there somewhere that we haven't seen. Like, everything we've seen her in has always been almost enormously expensive, especially for what it is. And so that's a huge warning sign for them, is that, they're spending so much. And then, we have the travel, the private jets. Like, Meghan took a private jet to go to Uvalde, Texas, to have a photo shoot in front of a memorial for dead children. And I think the estimate was something about $20,000 to $30,000 on that flight. And she brought cheap food. Like, she must have spent at most a couple of $100s on the food, and went to a place where she knew photographers were. Anyways, that whole thing was a publicity stunt. But her and Harry spent another, I think the estimated was like $300,000 on a private jet between LA and the UK, when there's planes that go every day. I mean, I know they have their kids, but if you stayed for 2 weeks instead of 3 days, then maybe you could have brought your kids on the plane in first class. Those first class seats are pretty nice every time I walked past them, because I boarded a plane 4 times to actually get on a plane that went out to the UK. I walked by first class every single time. I was sad every single time to walk past first class. And I was even also looking at Premier or whatever it is. And I'm like, that they kind of lay back a little bit more. The seats are bigger. And I'm like, oh, I want those too. Anyways, you look at all that and it's going, that's an enormous amount of money that you don't need to spend. Meghan had no reason to be in Uvalde, Texas, except if she wanted content for Netflix. Harry and Meghan had no reason to get a private jet to the UK because flights leave directly from LAX, one of the biggest airports in the world, to London, also one of the biggest airports in the world, every single day. And there's also special entrances and exits for celebrities at those airports because they're huge celebrity hubs. And so they could have gotten off the plane and out of everybody's view without attracting much attention. But again, I think the huge problem with Harry and Meghan is that it's all about optics. They need the flashy house, the flashy cars, the flashy travel. And all this is building up to is that Harry and Meghan really believed that they could burn through all this money. I think it was more Meghan than Harry. I could be totally wrong, but Meghan's wearing a lot of the flashy stuff, so I'll go with Meghan. Probably Harry too, but they have all this money they're funneling into all this expensive stuff, really thinking that the Netflix thing, the Spotify thing, and their foundation would bevy up what they're spending. However, news has come out today. I shouldn't say news. I should say there's a lot of rumblings that the Spotify deal is about to fall apart for Harry and Meghan. And that's $20 million that they just lost because they can't get a freaking podcast together. And that's not hard. It's not hard when you have everybody doing everything for you. Now, for me, when I do a podcast, it is going to take me some time because I have to arrange everything. I got to get everything together. I have to edit and promote and get it uploaded and get the graphic and get the title. Like, there's yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of different stuff that I have to do to get that together. However, Harry and Meghan don't have those issues because part of the money from Spotify would have been for them to hire a crew to do all those things for them. And they can't do it. And again, Meghan's podcast was supposed to drop this summer. It's almost the end of June. This video will probably go up on Saturday. That's my scheduled day. So, it's like the last week of June and we still have no release date for something coming in the summer. And again, it's not super difficult to get a podcast together and like get people to interview. I mean, I'm sure people would love to be interviewed by her. I don't think there's a huge lack of interest, but I don't think, maybe her title and her subject are all that interesting to people. But again, it's just like they're burning through all this money and they have nothing to show for it. And then now we have Netflix. Netflix has already dropped Pearl. We have no release dates on anything Harry and Meghan have done so far. And we should have something at least for the Invictus Games because the Invictus Games, those happened in April. So by this point with a podcast, a production, like if they were watching people before and after and during, like you should have kind of some idea when your product is going to be available. That we don't know, especially for a documentary, which doesn't require like special effects or anything like that, that is concerning. Obviously, there's rumors as well that Harry somehow got one of the doctor woman in Ukraine to send him video that they would use for the documentary. I don't quite understand that. I was reading some of the story about that and thought it was a little odd because I've seen her video and ended up with the Associated Press, which makes 1,000 times more sense than a wayward prince who doesn't really do anything. So I think, guys, the biggest problem that Harry and Meghan are having with this whole thing is that if these deals fall apart, they have nothing to fall back on. And they were really anticipating that their royal titles would get them through everything, that their royal titles would get them ahead, that it would all come together. And it hasn't happened. They are literally up a creek without a paddle, and they are in a huge world of hurt because they have a lot of work to do. They do. And they have to pay for this $14.65 million house. They have a $9.5 million mortgage. And they paid $3 million for Frogmore Cottage because they had to do that because everybody was, putting up a stink because they had this house they renovated and they abandoned it 6 months later. And so they have all these costs and you're looking at this and I just keep looking and going, how much money have you of his money, not hers? Because again, she didn't have that much money coming into the marriage. How much of that money have they burned through already? And are we getting ready for maybe a Harry or Meghan declaring bankruptcy? Will that be, part of a eventual divorce or something? I don't know. Again, guys, I can't say for sure, but just based on what I know from my parents' experience and knowing other people who are in, kind of a higher tax bracket, you guys, there are additional costs. And Harry and Meghan, those additional costs work if you are actually working and making money for a living. As far as we know, the only thing Harry and Meghan do is Meghan watches Harry play polo and Harry plays polo badly. That's the two things we know they do right now. And that is not going to pay the bills in Montecito. So it'll be interesting to see if they can and money woes are one of the biggest stresses on a marriage. And so if they're having money issues, if they don't have enough money coming in, then what are they going to do? Because again, the $100 million for Netflix, part of that, or a good chunk of that, is supposed to go towards production costs. And then if they hit certain markers, I think they get bonuses on top of that. But if you have no content, I mean, they've already canceled Pearl, if you have no release date for anything else, how is all of this going to come together? And Spotify, if the whole deal falls through, are they on the hook for a couple $1 million because they didn't fulfill their contract, their contract deals? That's a huge issue, not to mention the fact all of this. So at the end of the day, if the Spotify deal falls through, and if it does, I'll do a whole video on that. But it makes them look, it gives them a terrible reputation as business people. If they can't get a podcast together, if they have a $20 million deal and can't fulfill it, that is the kiss of death. That is a kiss of death for any future in Hollywood. And then you just look at it going, what in the world were they thinking with this whole fiasco? Why were they thinking? I think, again, and I've said this before, I think Meghan Markle thought her royal title was a magic. It was magically going to make her an Academy Award caliber actress. And it definitely did not. And all of us now are just watching this whole empire her and Harry created just utterly implode around them. And it's kind of interesting to watch. I'm not going to be mean and say it was fun, but it has been very, very interesting to watch how somebody with the whole world at their feet somehow let the whole thing fall through. So guys, if you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and please subscribe as well. If you guys have other ideas for videos, feel free to put them down in the comments. I can't guarantee I'll get to everything, but the idea is to do as much content as possible. So guys, thank you so much for watching and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.